Greetings to you all, and welcome. This series of videos will show you how I learned to speedrun a game from scratch. The idea is that I'm hoping it will be useful to other people who want to try and get into speedrunning, but don't know how to approach it, or perhaps you feel a bit overwhelmed because there's so many different things going on and things you don't understand and it looks so difficult to do. It's not. So long as you set yourself reasonable goals and targets, everyone can have fun speedrunning, and everybody should, because it's great fun. So this series, which I'm going to call my Speedrun Diary, is going to show you every single step I take in learning to speedrun a brand new game. Now, just for some disclosure, I have speedrun games in the past to a reasonably high standard, so I'd like to think I know what I'm talking about, but I'm only talking from my personal experience and I'll be teaching you through example of what I do. I'm not the only speedrunner. Maybe my way of learning isn't the best, I don't know, but this is what I do. And it works for me, so maybe it'll work for you. So step one when it comes to starting speedrunning is to choose a game. And there's a few criteria that you need to have in mind when it comes to selecting that game. The first one, and by far the most important, is personal enjoyment. Do not pick a game because it's popular. Do not pick a game because other people like it. Do not pick a game because it's very competitive and you want to get in there with your favourite speedrunner streamer. Pick a game that you like. Speedrunning will see you playing the same content over and over and over again, so you want to enjoy doing that. There are many games that you enjoy playing, but you only want to play them once. Maybe they're heavily story-driven and you get really attached to the characters involved. That isn't going to fly when it comes to speedrunning, okay? Personally, I like to look for games with interesting gameplay mechanics or just very solid controls that are fun to play any number of times. But please bear that in mind. Don't pick up a game just because it's the flavour of the month or it's new and you want to try and show off against other people. You aren't going to enjoy it and then you're going to give up. Number two, you need to look at the length of the speedrun. This is down to the length of the game, of course, but speedrun length and game length can often be very different depending on skips available. You need to keep the length of the speedrun in mind, because if you look at someone like me when it comes to speedrunning, I won't speedrun a game over an hour and a half, and that is pretty long. If you are starting out speedrunning, I would look for a game that's 30 minutes or less. If you think about the number of attempts you're going to have to do in a game, let's say you have to do 100 tries to get a really good time. You don't want to be playing a game that's 5 hours long. I don't care how much you like Final Fantasy VII. You're not speedrunning it as your first game, because you'll get in one attempt a day. Maybe you'll do 3 attempts and then you'll stop speedrunning entirely. And learning a game that's that long is ridiculous. It's serious commitment, and if you're just dipping your toes into the water speedrunning, pick something shorter, please. Third thing you have to ask yourself is randomness. Now this varies person to person, but in different speedruns, there is a different level of randomness. So some games are completely what we would call deterministic. There is no RNG, no randomness at all, it's all down to player skill. Those are, in my opinion, the best. Not for everyone though. Other games have a small amount of randomness built into them. Maybe your damage number fluctuates and sometimes this boss dies in 5 hits, sometimes it dies in 6 hits. What this means is, you might lose a run, your whole speedrun might be invalidated just because you got unlucky. This is very annoying for me. Some people are okay with it. Remember, it's something that happens to everyone, including your opposition, so it's not too bad. It's fair, but I find it frustrating to have my hard work taken away by bad luck. So I would advise picking a game that isn't very random. Now, some people play games that are completely random, and the only thing that determines a good run from a bad run is getting lucky. That's fine if that's your thing, but I wouldn't recommend it when you're starting out because you want to learn to speedrun, not learn to get lucky. Final tip, when it comes to choosing a game, watch a speedrun. If you've got a game in mind, you think it's going to be good, go and watch a run. Watch the world record run if you want. That's probably the most entertaining. Go and watch a run that's a bit slower than the world record run as well, to see what is more achievable. And have a look at it. You might think that the game is really cool, and then you look at the speedrun and it's actually kind of boring. This happens if the game is full of auto-scrollers, for example. Auto-scrollers are levels where is a term from platforming, where the screen is scrolling by itself at a fixed rate, and nothing you can do will speed it up. It therefore doesn't leave any room for you to do anything as a speedrunner. You just have to live. And it doesn't matter if you're the best in the world at the game, or if you're just a beginner. If you can survive the level, you get the perfect time. And that's not good competition, in my opinion. So please watch a speedrun or two. And if you dare say, I don't want to watch a speedrun because it's quite long and it's not very interesting, don't speedrun that game. If you can't stand to watch a speedrun of the game, don't run it. You need to love the game. Right, that's tips for picking a game. Next important thing you need to know is how to actually get the game or play the game. If you're playing an older game, which is what I typically do, you're going to need either old consoles, like Super Nintendo, or for my example I'll be using a Sega Genesis, and a cartridge of the game. Difficult to obtain, but depending on where you live, places like eBay, you can usually find them, not too bad. If you want to play on PC, on emulator, you can do that. It will require you to have a ROM, which are technically illegal. So you're on your own when it comes to finding those. But the emulators are fine to share, and I will put a link in the description of this video to a good emulator. It's called RetroArch. It's a sort of multi-purpose emulator. It can emulate most of the old systems, and some of the newer ones actually. It's very flexible. I'm not going to teach you how to use RetroArch. If you are interested, you can look that up for yourself. It's not that complicated to use, I assure you, and other people would have done tutorials on it already. If you want to play a game that's more modern, or a game that is for the PC, you are simply going to have to own the game. But that's fine. What you then need is a way to capture your gameplay footage. Now, you don't necessarily need to capture your gameplay footage, but if you want to submit your entry to the leaderboards, you are going to have video footage of what you've done. So, there's a couple of ways of doing that. If you're playing on emulator, or if you're playing a PC game, you can use a program called OBS, Open Broadcaster Software. It's free, and it's the tool that people use to both record and stream games, or anything really, for free. Again, I'll put a link, but I'm not going to teach you how to use OBS. That is a bit more complicated to use, but there are hundreds of tutorials on using OBS. Please go and watch one of them. They explain it better than I ever could. If you are playing on a console, you are going to need a capture card. A capture card is a little device, and what you do with it is you take the output feed from your console, split it into two. One of them you send to your television or your monitor or whatever you're using to actually see the game. The other one you send to the capture card. The capture card, as its name implies, captures the video footage. It runs through some software on your computer and it saves it for you. I'm not going to go into setting up capture cards because it's very different depending on the model of the card and the device you want to capture. Very complicated stuff. I can't cover every possibility. Look it up. Other people have done it. That is everything you need to know in order to start speedrunning. So I have already gone through this system, and I have decided the game I'm going to speedrun is the one you're actually watching right now. It's called World of Illusion, starring Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. It is, for a pro, about 15 minutes of a speedrun. For me, probably like 20 to 25 minutes of a speedrun. And that's a nice length. I like that. The game isn't particularly random. The game is nostalgic to me from my childhood, which makes it fun for me to play. It's pretty easy going. There's not too many auto-scrollers. I like the game. So I'm going to speedrun it. So one of the first things I like to do is to go over to Speedrun.com, which is a sort of universal bank of speedruns for different games. It's pretty much the authority for most games, but not every game. So you might want to check, but generally speaking, this is a good place to start at the very least. Search for your game. And what I'm looking at here is the world record. Let's go for it. No. I like to look at the world record's time and try to gauge what I think is going to be a realistic target to aim for at the beginning. Because if you just look at the world record time and you decide that's it, that's what I'm going for, you're going to be disappointed and disenfranchised when you don't get anywhere near it. What I'm seeing here is getting under 15 looks incredibly difficult. 16 looks a lot more reasonable. So I will set my target at 16 minutes. How hard that is, I don't know, and I may revise that later. But I like to set myself a realistic goal when I start. Just as an aside, the first game I ever speedran was Super Mario World. Any percent? It's now called 11 exit. Whoa. No. What is this? I set my initial time of this game for 15 minutes. I wanted to get under 15 minutes. Doesn't even get you on the leaderboard these days. Oof. But yes, that's the kind of goal. So maybe 16 is a bit ambitious, but we'll stick with 16 for now. So that's step one that I like to do. Step two, you need to check how everyone is running the game because you need to do the same as everyone else. So if you look here, you'll see everyone's playing it on emulator, and you'll see suggestions of good emulators you could use. This is Kega Fusion. I thought Gens wasn't very good, but there's Gens. RetroArch, BizHawk, very good emulators. Use any of those, you'll be good to go. Console is always a permitted choice. Here's the people running on console. Wonderful stuff. The other thing you need to look at is platform. So over here I see that everyone's playing the American version of the game. It's important that sometimes the Japanese version of the game will be faster because, typically speaking, Japanese text is more compact and so you have fewer text boxes, which means you can get through dialogue a lot quicker. It's more of a thing in games like Final Fantasy than it is in World of Illusion, but it's something to keep in mind. And again, even on console, people are playing the American version. They're not playing the Japanese, so it probably doesn't make a difference in this game, would be my guess. Right. That's the initial thought out the way. You also need to choose what category you want to play. Categories are listed at the top here. The default category is probably what you want to play, because that will be what most people play, and that's probably best to start with. For this game, that means playing as Mickey, which is what we shall do. So that's all fine. Next step, very important step. On the left side here, the word guides. This will be, for most games, your absolute gold mine of information. Now I look at this and I see some French, which I immediately ignore. Any percent history, that could be useful, it's probably worth a watch. Technical notes from SDA, probably not that important when I'm starting out. A guide written by Mint Montgomery, who was the world record holder. Yeah, that is useful. So this is what I shall be using to teach myself the speedrun. If there isn't anything in the guide section to work off of, then you can use someone's speedrun. Probably don't use the world record because it probably does tricks that are a bit too advanced. But hey, you can usually find something in here. I particularly like to watch speedruns that have a controller input on the side. I find it easier to learn using them, but that's up to you. There may be other things in here in the resources or in the forum section that you can read that might be useful, but there you go. So that's it for this video, and look, we haven't even touched the game yet, but that's how this works. You've got to put in a bit of time, making sure you've got everything right, before you commit a lot of time to learning the game itself. And that's what the next video will be about. I'll walk you through exactly how I learned the speedrun of this game, and my thoughts along the way. Hopefully you'll join me for that, and I shall see you then.